The ground shook. I was halfway through feeding my goats when I heard it, the sharp roar of engines and the crashing sound of trees being torn apart. I ran up the ridge behind my barn and froze. Bulldozers. 2 of them. Big, yellow, mean-looking machines rolling across the field, grinding through my vegetable patches like they were nothing. Dust exploded behind them, and in the middle of it all stood her. Karen. She was wearing her usual oversized sunglasses, a bright pink blazer, and her signature, let me speak to the manager hairstyle. One hand on her hip, the other waving like she was conducting a marching band. Behind her, 3 HOA board members stood with clipboards, looking proud like they were overseeing the building of a new shopping mall. My jaw dropped. My farm, my crops, my land. They were destroying it, ripping through years of work like it didn't matter. And she didn't even see me yet. But I saw her. I saw everything. And what Karen didn't know was that I wasn't just a quiet farmer on the edge of town. I own the county. Let me tell you how we got here. It started 2 summers ago when I moved back from the city. I'd had enough of the corporate rat race, meetings that never ended, deadlines that never mattered, and people who only cared about money and promotions. My heart was tired. My soul was tired. So, I took what I had left in savings, bought a 10-acre farm in a quiet part of town, and decided to start over. It wasn't much at first, just a dusty barn, an old red tractor that coughed like it had bronchitis, and a house that looked like it could fall over if you leaned on it too hard. But it was mine. Every beam, every brick, every broken pipe. I loved it all. I fixed it up myself, bit by bit, with help from a few neighbors. That's how I met folks like Jim, a retired Army vet who taught me how to repair fences, or Miss Loretta, who baked me pies every Sunday and always brought extra for my dogs. People here believed in kindness, in helping each other. At least most of them did. Karen wasn't one of them. She moved into the new development on the edge of town, Silver Lake Estates, which bordered the south side of my farm. It was one of those gated communities that looked like a glossy magazine ad. Perfect lawns, identical white fences, and HOA rules longer than a novel. They just finished building 30 homes when she became the HOA president. Now, I didn't care what they did inside their gates. Fancy BBQs, flag restrictions, arguments over mailbox heights. None of that was my business. I kept to my land and let them keep to theirs. But Karen didn't see it that way. See, my farm didn't fit her vision. It started small. First, it was letters. Nicely worded, printed on Silver Lake Estates letterhead. Dear landowner, we'd like to formally invite you to consider matching your fencing to ours to maintain aesthetic continuity. I ignored them. Then came the complaints. Your chickens are noisy. Your goats smell. We believe your scarecrow is aggressive in appearance. I still ignored them. Then, she showed up at my door. It was a warm Saturday morning. I was hauling hay when I heard a knock. Sharp and fast, like someone slapping the wood. I opened it, and there she was, holding a clipboard and looking me up and down like I was a problem she needed to solve. Good morning, she said. I'm Karen Simmons, president of the Silver Lake HOA. I'm sure you've heard from us. I nodded. I have. She smiled. Great. Then you understand we're trying to protect the value of our neighborhood. Your establishment here poses a bit of a distraction to our community's appearance. I raised an eyebrow. You mean my farm? She laughed like it was obvious. Yes, well, farm. Of course. The thing is, we have investors interested in expanding Silver Lake further, and your property is right on the edge. With a little clearing and development, it could really add value to the entire area. I crossed my arms. Not interested. Her smile tightened. You might want to reconsider. Progress is coming whether you like it or not. I closed the door. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Over the next few months, things got worse. Someone spray-painted eyesore on my barn wall. My water line was mysteriously shut off twice. My mailbox was smashed. Still, I didn't budge. You see, I wasn't just a farmer. Not really. Before all this, I was the youngest person ever elected to the county board. I worked hard, stayed humble, and made connections. When I left office to care for my father during his final years, the respect never left. I still had friends in the zoning department, the sheriff's office, and, most importantly, the land registrar's office. But I never threw that around. I never needed to. Until now. The last straw came one Tuesday morning. I was out back repairing a broken chicken coop panel when I saw construction stakes in my northern field. Bright pink markers stabbed into the dirt in a perfect rectangle, forming what looked like the outline of a road. I followed them until I hit a brand new sign, future site of Silver Lake Park. Coming soon. I tore out of the ground. I called the county zoning board immediately. Nobody had submitted a request for development. Nobody had filed for permits. In fact, the sign was illegal. So who put it there? Karen. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a glass of iced tea and called in a few favors. Not for revenge, not yet, just information. Turns out, the HOA had filed plans with a private firm to expand Silver Lake. They just forgot to mention that they didn't own the land. They assumed I'd sell, or move, or maybe they thought they could force me out. They had no idea. I started documenting everything. Every incident, every broken fence, every trespass. I installed trail cameras, got aerial drone footage of the new paths they were cutting through the woods on my property. I wanted a complete file. I even had a meeting with my old friend Bethany, now head of the county's legal affairs committee. She nearly spit out her coffee when I showed her the photos. They're developing on your land without permission? I nodded. It's about to get worse. And it did. Because the next day, the bulldozers came. That's where I'll leave you for now. The bulldozers didn't stop. I raced down the hill, boots crunching over broken twigs and trampled kale, waving my arms like a madman. The drivers saw me, but they didn't care. One of them even smirked. I had to jump in front of the second machine to make it stop. Its massive front blade came to a grinding halt just inches from my chest, spewing hot exhaust into the air. What do you think you're doing? I shouted. The guy leaned out the window. Just following the site plans, buddy. We're clearing for the park. This is my land. You're trespassing. He shrugged like it wasn't his problem. Take it up with the HOA. Then he threw the bulldozer in reverse and rumbled away, flattening a fence post as he backed up. By the time I made it to Karen, she was standing near a fold-up table with a white banner draped across it that read Silver Lake expansion. Breaking ground today. A few HOA members clapped as she gave a little speech, holding a shiny golden shovel like it was some kind of trophy. I stormed toward her. Karen, turn those machines around now. She turned, feigning surprise. Oh, I didn't see you there. Stop pretending you don't know you're on my land. Oh, please, she said, adjusting her sunglasses. You've had that ragged of land for what, 2 years? It's barely usable. We're improving it. I pointed at the sign. You didn't file a permit. You didn't buy the property. You don't even have the legal right to stand here. She rolled her eyes. We had a board vote. We decided it was in the community's best interest. I was stunned. A board vote doesn't give you the right to trespass. Karen smiled that smug, tight-lipped smile again. You should have joined the HOA when you had the chance. I don't remember walking away. I was too angry. I just remember calling Bethany again and saying, they did it. They finally did it. And she replied, I'll be there in 2 hours. Bring your documentation. I didn't wait. I pulled out my folder, my drone footage, my land deed, every scrap of evidence, and drove straight to the county courthouse. The receptionist recognized me right away. I asked to speak to Zeke, the new county zoning director. He used to be my intern. Zeke nearly fell over when I showed him the files. They did this without a permit? Yep. And this is your land? Every inch. You want to file an emergency injunction? I nodded. It only took 30 minutes. With a court order in hand, I made a second call, this time to Sheriff Daniels. He and I served on the flood management board years ago, back when the dam nearly burst during the spring thaw. We'd been through worse together. Sheriff Daniels met me at the front of my farm with 2 deputies. We hopped into his patrol truck, drove around the hill, and pulled up just in time to see Karen sipping lemonade in a folding chair like she was sunbathing on vacation. She stood up when she saw the sheriff. Officer, well, thank God you're here. This man is threatening our development project. He's being aggressive. Daniels held up a hand. Ma'am, you need to stop talking. She blinked. Excuse me? We've got a court order here stating you and your associates are illegally trespassing and conducting unpermitted construction on private property. That's a felony. Karen's jaw dropped. I what? No, you don't understand. We had a vote. Votes don't override state law, ma'am. The Bulldozers were shut down. Her team was escorted off the property. And Karen? Karen stood in the middle of my ruined field, speechless, her pink blazer flapping in the wind. I wish I could say she disappeared after that, but of course she didn't. The next day, I got a letter. Not from the HOA, from their lawyer. Apparently, they were suing me for obstruction of community development, defamation, and emotional distress. You can probably imagine what I did next. I went right back to the courthouse, filed my own countersuit for property damage, trespassing, and unlawful construction, then called up Judge Riley. Riley was an old friend, tough as nails, and didn't take crap from anyone. She agreed to hear the case as soon as the calendar opened. But I didn't just wait around. I rebuilt. Jim, Miss Loretta, and a half-dozen others came by to help replant the torn-up vegetables. Kids from the high school FFA program offered to paint my barn as part of their community hours. Loretta brought pies, as usual. We laughed, we worked, we healed. And then, right when I thought things might settle down, Karen showed up again. This time with a news crew. They rolled up in a black van with the Silver Lake HOA logo stuck on the side, like it was official. A guy with a big camera stepped out, followed by a woman in a green dress holding a mic. Karen straightened her posture, smoothed her blazer, and turned to face them. We're here today to shine a light on the dangers of unsupervised rural landowners disrupting community progress. Some individuals believe they're above accountability, but the truth will always come out. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, as she gestured to the camera and pointed at me like I was a criminal. I walked down the steps and stopped just out of frame. Hey, I said, you want to show them the court order? Karen went pale. I pulled it out, holding it high so the camera could see. This woman trespassed on my land, sent bulldozers through my crops, and now she's trying to spin the story like I'm the villain. The reporter turned to Karen. Is this true? Karen stammered. He's twisting everything. That land is part of our community development. He refused to be part of our vision. He's making things worse. Did you have legal ownership of the land? I thought he'd sell. You thought. The cameraman lowered his rig. Karen's lips quivered. I could see it, her grip on the story slipping. But still, she wasn't done. Because the next morning, a massive wooden sign appeared at the front of my farm. It read, Condemned property, unsafe. Enter at your own risk. Nailed right to my gate. It had the Silver Lake HOA seal. Only thing is, Karen didn't realize one little detail. That fake condemnation notice? That just turned her civil trespass into a criminal offense. The fake condemnation sign was the final nail in her coffin, and she hammered it in herself. It was early morning when I found it. The sun hadn't even cleared the trees yet, but there it was, bold as ever. Condemned property, unsafe. Enter at your own risk. The sign was thick plywood, professionally painted, with a silver HOA seal printed right at the bottom corner. It had been bolted into the wooden posts of my front gate, which meant they'd trespassed again in the dead of night to put it up. I stared at it, stunned. Not because I believed the warning. I knew my land was fine, but because of how far Karen was willing to go. This wasn't just petty complaints anymore. This wasn't just about goats or scarecrows or fences. This was an all-out war. And she had no idea how badly she just messed up. I took a picture of the sign, then called Sheriff Daniels. He answered on the first ring. She put up a fake condemnation notice, I said. There was a pause on the line. Seriously? Bolted it to my gate. Silver Lake, HOA logo and all. He sighed. That's criminal misrepresentation. I'll be out there in 20. 20 turned into 10. He pulled up in a county truck with 2 deputies, all of them wearing that expression that said, not this nonsense again. Daniels examined the sign, took a few pictures himself, then pried it off with a crowbar and set it gently in the back of his truck. This one's going straight to the DA, he said. But Karen wasn't just in trouble with the law now. She was in trouble with the entire town. News spread fast. The story was already bubbling online thanks to the camera crew she had dragged out last week. A local blog had picked it up, then a regional news outlet. Now, neighbors who had been on the fence were starting to see the truth. People who used to nod politely at Karen during HOA meetings were now crossing the street to avoid her. Some residents in Silver Lake even started writing me apology letters. One guy, Brian, drove over in his golf cart just to hand me a box of cookies and say, "We didn't know what she was doing. We thought it was just a zoning thing. I didn't hold it against them." Not everyone knew what was happening behind closed doors. But Karen knew, and instead of backing down, she doubled down. The very next week, I got a notice from the county. Someone had filed over a dozen noise complaints about my farm. Tractors being too loud, chickens crowing at dawn, goats bleating in the afternoon. Even my wind chimes, apparently. They were all filed anonymously. But I didn't need a detective to know where they came from. Still, this wasn't my first rodeo. I knew how to fight this kind of thing, not with fists or shouting, but with paperwork. I responded to each complaint, provided timestamps for my security cameras, decibel readings for my equipment, and even statement from neighbors who said they never heard a thing. Every complaint was thrown out. That might have satisfied most people, but not Karen. She was getting desperate, and desperation makes people reckless. I was tending to my beehives one afternoon when my phone rang. It was Zeke from zoning again. "You need to come downtown," he said. "We found something." I drove straight there. Zeke met me in the lobby and led me into a small office where he had a stack of papers spread across the table. "This is the Silver Lake Estates development permit," he said. "All their blueprints, filings, and plot lines." I flipped through them. "Okay," he tapped a section near the back. "They filed for Phase 2 expansion." "That's nothing new," I said. "They've been dreaming about Phase 2 since they paved the first driveway." "Yes, but look closer." I leaned in, and that's when I saw it. They had redrawn the county boundary lines. Specifically, they'd shifted the line that marked the edge of Silver Lake to include over 4 acres of my land. Not just on the zoning map, but also on every document submitted to the state for funding. They were pretending they already owned it. I was speechless. "They submitted this 3 weeks ago," Zeke said. "And the worst part? They included an affidavit claiming the land had already been purchased." I felt a slow, deep heat build in my chest. "That's fraud." "Yup." "State-level fraud." "Yup." I looked up at him. "Have you notified the Attorney General?" Zeke smiled. "Already did. It was happening." The trap Karen had been walking into with her expensive heels and smug attitude, she was now neck-deep in it. And this time, there was no HOA letter or fake condemnation sign that could save her. But she wasn't going down alone. That weekend, I came home to find someone had cut the power lines to my barn. The lights were off, the freezer where I kept the animal feed had started to thaw, and the automated irrigation system had completely shut down. It wasn't an accident. Someone had used bolt cutters to sever the line right at the junction box. It cost me thousands in lost crops. I reported it, of course, but with no cameras pointed at that side of the barn and no direct evidence, the sheriff couldn't press charges yet. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring out the window at the dark field. I thought about my dad. He used to say, "Never pick a fight with a man who plows his land before sunrise. If he's up that early, he's got nothing to lose and nothing to fear." I was that man now. And Karen? She just picked the fight of her life. Because if she thought fake signs and cut wires were her strongest play, she hadn't seen what was coming next. 3 days later, every resident in Silver Lake Estates received a certified letter from me. The certified letters were simple, typed on official county letterhead, signed by me in blue ink. Each one read, "Dear resident of Silver Lake Estates, this is a formal notice to inform you that Phase 2 of your community's proposed expansion plan includes land not legally owned or transferred by your HOA or any related entity. Development or use of this land may constitute trespassing and could result in legal action. Additionally, the submission of fraudulent documents to the state is currently under investigation. This is not a threat, it's a courtesy. One your HOA leadership has chosen not to extend to you." And then I attached a copy of the fraudulent boundary map, the zoning office's rejection stamp, and a highlighted portion of the original deed proving I owned every inch of the land they'd been eyeing. The fallout was nuclear. Within 24 hours, my phone was blowing up. Not with threats, but apologies. People I didn't even know were emailing, calling, and even driving over to my farm, asking if what I'd written was true. I told them yes, and if they wanted to see for themselves, I had the evidence. Some of them cried. One family, the Davenports, showed up with their 3 kids and a homemade sign that read, "We're sorry. We believe you." They brought blueberry muffins and offered to help with anything I needed: repair work, clean up, even walking the goats. They weren't the only ones. Over the next week, more than half the residents of Silver Lake signed a petition calling for Karen's removal as HOA president. They cited her unauthorized actions, reckless behavior, and failure to disclose legal conflicts. The HOA board tried to push back, until someone leaked emails showing that Karen had promised them first dibs on the new plots of land she intended to steal. The county stepped in and suspended all further development on the HOA's land. Karen was backed into a corner, but she wasn't done swinging. Late one night, I heard something unusual, a low hum in the distance, the kind you only hear when something big is happening where it shouldn't. I threw on my coat, grabbed my flashlight, and drove my ATV out toward the southern field. That's when I saw them. 2 flatbed trucks, unloading prefab concrete slabs and steel frames. A construction crew, working under the cover of darkness. I cut the engine and coasted downhill, staying just behind a row of hedges. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. Men in orange vests, talking quietly, placing markers along the edge of my property. I didn't yell. I didn't even move. Instead, I pulled out my phone and recorded every minute. Then I called Daniels. "Are you sitting down?" I asked. By the time his truck arrived, the crew was already halfway through anchoring a foundation for what looked like a security gate. As soon as they saw his badge, they froze. "Who hired you?" Daniels asked one of the workers. The guy looked nervous. "Private job. HOA expansion. You have paperwork." The man held out a single sheet, something typed and signed, but not notarized, not verified. Daniels read it and chuckled. "This isn't a permit. This is a memo." The crew was escorted off-site. The trucks impounded. The equipment seized. Karen was charged with illegal development, trespassing, criminal mischief, and falsifying government documents. The investigation into the fraudulent map had gained traction at the state level, and now the Attorney General's office had stepped in. But here's the wildest part. When Karen was arrested, she tried to play the victim. Outside the courthouse, in front of reporters, she wailed about how I was bullying a mother just trying to make her neighborhood better. She called me a land hoarder, accused me of using my influence to suppress community growth, and insisted I was abusing power to keep the common folk out. Common folk? I was raised by a factory worker and a school nurse. I grew vegetables and taught local kids how to care for chickens. I built everything I had with sweat and secondhand tools. And now I was being painted as the villain, so I decided it was time to tell my story. I reached out to the same news station she had dragged to my front yard. This time, they sent their senior correspondent. We filmed a segment right in my barn, surrounded by hay bales and goats. I showed them the documents, the maps, the footage of bulldozers tearing on my crops. I didn't smear Karen. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told the truth. The story aired on the 6 p.m. news the next day, and it exploded. Within 48 hours, national outlets picked it up. Headlines read, HOA president tries to steal farm. Learns owner controls the county. When Karen met her match. Farm versus HOA. The plot that backfired. Karen's face was everywhere, not in the way she wanted. Silver Lake Estates became a punchline overnight. But even with everything falling apart, she still had one card left to play. Lawsuits. Her lawyer filed a multi-million-dollar claim against me for public defamation, emotional trauma, and loss of reputation. It was laughable, but it still required a court response. So I filed a counterclaim again, doubling the damages from her bulldozing, the wire cutting, the fraud, and now the trespass during nighttime construction. The court date was set. It would be a public hearing, and as the day grew closer, people started lining up to attend. Not just residents of Silver Lake, but folks from across the county. They all wanted to see it. The battle that started with one Karen and one quiet farmer, and had now grown into something way bigger. And that's when I got the call From the governor's office. When my phone lit up with restricted number, I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick it up. Hello, Mr. Jackson? This is Caroline Blake from the office of the governor. I'm calling on behalf of Governor Willis. I blinked. Excuse me? The governor has been briefed on your case. Given the public attention and the implications of zoning fraud at the county level, he'd like to schedule a meeting with you. In person. I leaned against the fence, looking out across my field as the wind rustled through the corn stalks. This was real. This wasn't another HOA stunt. This was the state. I'll make time, I said. 3 days later, I was walking into the state capitol building, my boots echoing off polished marble floors. I'd worn my best denim, the only shirt I owned with buttons all the way up, and a clean shave for the first time in months. Governor Willis met me in a private conference room, surrounded by 2 aides, a state attorney, and a full legal file already on the table. He stood, offered his hand, and said, "Mr. Jackson, we've been following your situation closely." I nodded, still trying to wrap my head around all of it. "You handled yourself with restraint," he added, "when most people would have gone to war with that woman." I laughed lightly. I thought I was going to. More than once. He gestured for me to sit, then slid a folder toward me. "This is a joint investigation opening today. Karen Simmons, along with 3 other HOA board members and the development firm she worked with, will be facing state-level charges for zoning fraud, unlawful land development, and falsification of public documents." I flipped through the paperwork. Warrants, declarations, arrest notices. It was finally happening. The governor continued, "The reason we called you in is because we're also looking at statewide HOA reform. Your story has sparked a massive public debate." I raised an eyebrow. "You want me to be part of that? We'd like you to chair the new Rural Landowner Advisory Committee." I almost laughed. "I'm just a farmer." He smiled. "A farmer who just took down one of the most out-of-control HOAs in the state without ever lifting a finger in anger. That's the kind of leadership we need." It was the highest high I'd felt in years. My dad would have been proud. But back home, not everything was celebration. Karen had posted bail, and her lawsuit against me, still active. Despite everything, the charges, the arrests, the footage, the national humiliation, she was still trying to drag me to court. The courtroom was packed the day of the hearing. There were even people standing outside the windows, just trying to listen in. I sat at the defendant's table, calm, composed, with my lawyer, a brilliant woman named Dana who'd worked with the county for 2 decades. Karen sat across from me, her face tight, expression unreadable, flanked by a new attorney who clearly had no idea what he'd gotten into. The judge entered. It was Judge Riley. As soon as she sat down and adjusted her glasses, she looked straight at Karen and said, "Let me be clear. I'm well aware of this case, and I'm not here for theatrics." Karen's lawyer opened with some sob story about emotional trauma and community division. Dana opened with a flash drive. She played a video of the bulldozers tearing through my crops, drone footage showing the stakes hammer into my property, and a clip of Karen telling the news camera, "We had a board vote. He should have sold." The room went dead silent. Dana walked through every illegal act. The boundary redraw, the late-night construction, the fake condemnation notice, the manipulation of homeowners. She ended with the signed letters from Silver Lake residents begging for Karen's removal. Karen didn't say a word. Riley folded her hands. "Miss Simmons, in my years on the bench, I've seen arrogance. I've seen ignorance. But rarely do I see both, wrapped in such spectacular denial." Karen's eyes were wide now, her lips trembling. "This is not only a frivolous lawsuit," Riley continued. "It's an insult to the legal process. You manipulated an entire community. You attempted to defraud the state. And now, you waste this court's time because your feelings are hurt." She banged the gavel. "Case dismissed, and I'm referring this matter for further sanction review." The crowd burst into applause. Some people cried. Someone even shouted, "Free the goats," which made no sense but got a huge laugh. Outside, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement, simple, direct. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Respect for people's land, their rights, and their lives. But it wasn't over just yet. Because 2 days later, a moving truck showed up at Silver Lake Estates. Karen was being evicted, not by me, by her own HOA. Turns out, after she was removed as president and charged with multiple felonies, she lost her protections under the Silver Lake Charter. Her misuse of funds, illegal contracts, and abuse of authority had triggered an automatic expulsion clause. She fought it, of course, but in the end, she had no choice. She packed up and left. But before she did, she made one last move. I was out in the barn when a car pulled up, a silver BMW. She stepped out, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf like she was shielding herself from the world. She walked up to the fence and waited. I approached slowly. She didn't speak at first, just stared across the field. "This was never personal," she said finally. "You just didn't know your place." I tilted my head. I knew exactly where I stood. "You're the one who thought you could stand on everyone else's land." Her lips tightened. "You ruined my life," she whispered. "No, it'll be, You did that yourself." Then I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. The car drove off, and for the first time in nearly a year, everything was quiet. But the story wasn't quite finished, because something wild was about to happen. And it all started with a letter I got in the mail. From a billionaire. The envelope was thick, heavy paper, hand-addressed. No return label. Just my name and my farm's address in elegant, looping script. I almost tossed it in the pile with the rest. Local event flyers, charity raffles, a coupon book, but something about the feel of it made me pause. I slid my thumb under the flap and unfolded the cream-colored letter. It read, "Mr. Jackson, my name is Theodore Huxley. I'm the CEO of Huxley Global Developments. I followed your story with great interest. What you did in Silver Lake was not only courageous, it was deeply necessary. I own 400 acres of land, 3 counties east of you. The local HOA has been attempting to seize it through a series of fraudulent claims and manipulative tactics. I believe you may be the only man in this state who understands exactly what I'm facing. I'd like to meet. If you're willing to consult, name your price." At the bottom was a handwritten PS. "I don't hire lawyers. I hire people who know how to win wars without fighting." I read it again and again. This wasn't some YouTube comment or media request. This was a real offer. From a billionaire developer, asking me to help him deal with a rogue HOA that had bitten off more than it could chew. I drove out to the address he gave the very next morning. It was like stepping into a different world. Rolling hills, a private airstrip, and a home so big it made the Capitol building look modest. Huxley was older than I expected. Gray hair, sharp suit, hands like someone who still did yard work by choice. He greeted me on his front porch like we were old friends. "The man who took down Karen Simmons," he said with a grin. "God, I wish I had that on video." I chuckled. It wasn't about revenge. He nodded. "That's why I reached out." We sat for hours. He explained the situation, how a group of wealthy HOA board members in the township of Marble Ridge had begun reclassifying his land as recreational overflow space, despite it being privately held and clearly outside their jurisdiction. Sounded familiar. But this time it was bigger. They were backed by a corrupt planning commissioner and had ties to a lobbying firm that had rewritten multiple local ordinances under the table. "I could bulldoze it all," Huxley said, sipping bourbon on ice. "But the public's watching. I need someone who can outsmart them, not outspend them." I thought about it. For years I had tried to live a quiet life, grow crops, raise animals, mend what was broken. But something had changed. Karen woke something in me. Not anger, not ego, purpose. I agreed to help. The first thing I did was bring in Dana, my lawyer, and Zeke from zoning. Then I made a quiet trip back to the state courthouse to meet with the AG's office. With the network I'd built, the reputation I had now, and the spotlight still on my story, it wasn't hard to start poking holes in Marble Ridge's scheme. We discovered their recreational space was built on falsified topography. Their development funding came from shell companies that funneled money into personal accounts. And the planning commissioner? He bought a second house, coincidentally right inside Marble Ridge, paid for in cash. It was the biggest land fraud case the state had seen in 20 years. And I was right at the center of it. But Karen? Oh, she wasn't done with me either. Turns out, After she was evicted, she moved 2 towns over and somehow clawed her way onto another HOA board. Smaller place. Less organized. They didn't know who she was until someone forwarded me a video. It was Karen, standing in front of a meeting room podium, trying to push for a vote on new bylaws that would allow her to expedite land reclamation for aesthetic improvements. I nearly spit out my coffee. I posted the clip to my new website, *HOA Watchdog, * with the caption, "Guess who's back?" It went viral in under an hour. Karen's face became a meme. Again, she resigned the next morning. That same week, Huxley's legal team announced they were launching a national initiative to fund rural landowner defense groups. Guess who they named as chairman? Me. They even bought me a new tractor. I didn't ask for it, but I won't lie, I grinned when I saw it parked on my driveway. Brand new, candy apple red, with a custom plate on the side that read, "Karen who?" But here's the part no one expected. Silver Lake came back. Not Karen. Not her old board. The people. One sunny Saturday, a long line of cars came up the gravel road to my farm. Families. Kids. Even a few HOA members who had voted against Karen when it mattered. They weren't here to protest. They came to help. One man, Brian, the same guy who once brought me cookies, stepped forward and handed me a wooden sign. It read, "Jackson's Farm, Land of the Free." They'd made it together. I was speechless. Then Miss Loretta stepped out of her car with a pie in one hand and a hammer in the other. "Well," she said, "let's put it up." We nailed the sign to the front gate. Everyone clapped. Someone started singing. A little girl named Abby hugged one of my goats and said, "Mr. Jackson, I want to live on a farm like this one day." I knelt beside her and said, "Then protect your land, sweetheart, and never let anyone tell you you don't belong on it." As the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned that soft purple only country folks understand, I looked out over everything I'd built and everything I defended. They tried to take it from me. They sent letters, bulldozers, lawsuits. But what they didn't know, what they never understood, was that I didn't just own the land. I owned the county. And now, I was ready to own the future.